But permit me to say, fellow Africans, I do not know if it is because of slavery or colonization, but I don't think that that argument is available to us. If you look through history, all civilizations have suffered enslavement and colonization. The time is now that we must stop giving excuses. If you are in Zambia, let us ask, what has the copper in Zambia done to the people of Zambia? If you are in Botswana, what has the diamond in Botswana done to the people of Botswana? If you are in Mozambique, the gas that is being generated, how is it changing the lives of the people of Mozambique? If you are in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the home of coltan, how are the lives of the people of the Democratic Republic of Congo being changed by the exploitation of that mineral? And the answer is none. They come and they take it. The words of Julius Caesar, Veni, Vidi, Vici, I came, saw, and conquered, ring true. People come to Africa and they say they came, they saw, and conquered. The time is now that we must address the economic situation. Yet, our politicians, still in their unguarded moments, tell us we have negotiated for jobs in those parts of the world. For them, it is winning the next vote. And we who are the citizens, we don't question them enough. They bombard us with statistics of the number of girls and boys that they have taken to Germany, to Bahrain, to Oman, to Saudi Arabia, but they don't ask whether they are in modern day slavery. And we now know they are. What are we doing about it? We have seen politicians collecting money to take them to be enslaved.
Yes, here we are. Greetings and welcome everyone, my dear lovely family. That's how painful it is that African politicians are selling us. African politicians are receiving a lot of money by selling young Africans as cheap laborers. As you heard from Professor, some are coming to us telling us that they have found jobs in abroad, in Yemen, in Arab countries, but in real sense, they are selling us as slaves. They're selling young men, the women of this continent as cheap laborers. Do we have a means to move out of this? Yes, we have a means. If we young people, Africans, we can unite and speak with one voice. So in this video, I'm sharing this conversation made by Professor PLO Lumumba so that we can learn and we can be inspired what we can do as Africans to move out of this modern slavery. So join with me in this video. Please do not skip. Watch this video from the beginning to the end. There's something that is very, very interesting we need to hear and to know and to share as Africans. Here is a full conversation. Welcome.
Much, Sister Fast, for inviting me to share my thoughts with you on this very topical subject. And permit me also to congratulate you for the great work that you are doing in this area, and also to congratulate those who are working with you throughout the world. We speak at a time when the continent of Africa faces many difficulties. Only yesterday in Accra, Ghana, I was at a meeting where we are talking about a borderless Africa. And everybody who spoke on that occasion was as passionate as they were enthusiastic, saying that Africa can only realize her potential if she allows her sons and daughters to move freely across the artificially created boundaries. And as I was in Accra, I also had the occasion to watch the news. and see what had happened in Nigeria, where many young men and women were killed in the state of Kwara. And when it was my turn to speak, I did remind the audience that we are speaking at a time when in different parts of Africa, there are conflicts, the effect of which is to take away opportunities for young men and women. I reminded my audience of the conflict in Sudan, in parts of South Sudan, in Central African Republic, in Cameroon, in different parts of Africa. And I reminded my audience that we can talk about a borderless Africa all we want, but until the day that we are able to restore genuine peace, Africa will not realize our potential. And it's not lost on me that I am talking in a forum which is put together by a Catholic Church. And it is also not lost on me that you've made it as ecumenical as it should be, with prayers from the Christians, from the Muslims, and from African traditionalists. And therefore, I will, as I make my presentation, also make reference to Christianity, to African spirituality, and indeed to Islam, and one may dare say even other religions such as Hinduism and Buddhism, to the extent that all of them recognize that human life is sacrosanct because we are made in the image of God. Yet what amazes me, and I believe it amazes you, is man's inhumanity to man. The injunctions of every religion are so clear. When Christ talks about loving your neighbor in that famous parable of the Good Samaritan, it is as clear can be, that we have a duty to be our brothers and sisters' keepers. But yet, we do not do that. If you look at our African spirituality and African way of doing things today, we talk about Ubuntu. And Ubuntu's fundamental philosophy is that you take care of all, that you are because I am. If you look at Islam, if you look at the hadiths and you look at the Quran itself, it is as clear can be that we have a duty to take care of our fellows, but we don't. Which begs the question, what is the problem? But the Bible answers that question, that the human heart is desperate and evil, but for the intervention of God himself. And it is only, therefore, when we make ourselves as vessels of God that we become good people. Those of you who are trained in the Catholic tradition, and you can correct my Latin if you must, the whole idea of conversatio morum, that you have a complete change of heart when you receive God, is something that should underline what should define our very being. As I speak to you today, estimates vary, but we are told that in the African continent alone, there are nearly 7 million people who are being trafficked at one time or the other. And I believe that those figures are conservative, and that indeed, if we were to do a proper count, we would be amazed. It is not to say that the world has not paid attention to this unfortunate reality. If you look at the history of the world throughout the ages, even in times of war, there was always the realization that we as human beings ought to conduct war, ironically and paradoxically, in a humane way. I look at a battle which is recorded in Hindu mythology, the Battle of Kurukshetra, 5,000 years before Christianity, before the war, the commanders sit down and agree on the laws of war. The Red Cross itself was created after the Battle of Solferino, and the international community in the world that we know today, when it gathered in 1945 in San Francisco in the United States of America and came up with the UN Charter, recognized that human rights should be at the heart of human relations. It is not lost on me that in that year, almost all countries in the continent of Africa were still under colonial tutelage, save for Liberia, Ethiopia, and Egypt. But even then, there was the recognition that human rights should be at the very heart of all our affairs, and therefore human dignity. And in 1948, and we are all aware of this, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in Paris also recognized that human dignity is very important. And of course, in 1949, the Geneva Convention that deals with the law of war also made that recognition. In the specific area of trafficking, we know that there have been instruments which have been generated by the international community, by the UN, and we also are aware of the Palermo protocols that have talked about what ought not to be done against human beings, that is trafficking, particularly of women and children. In the African continent, the African Charter on Human and People's Rights also talks about our duty to ourselves. And on the specific issue of trafficking, the African community did sit down in 2006 in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso, and came up with the Ouagadougou Plan of Action, which has been revitalized, so that if you look at the international legal environment, there is no shortage of this treaty, that protocol that tells us what to do and what not to do, which begs the question, what then is the problem? Why is it that in the face of all these problems continue to debilitate and to undermine our very being? And the human heart defies understanding. The human heart is capable of great good and great evil. And many times, as the saying goes, evil takes the stairs and evil takes the elevator and good takes the stairs. And therefore, many times we see ourselves almost drowning in evil. Recently, I had the opportunity of listening to a speech or a sermon, if one may, by the former vice president of Nigeria, Yemi Osinbajo. In a nutshell, what Yemi was talking about, he was questioning the Christianity that we practice in the continent of Africa and reminding the audience that if you look at the history of Europe, the Christianity and the Christian ethic that made Europe move from agriculture to industrialization was about a Christianity of Puritanism, a Christianity of ethic, a Christianity of respecting time, and Europe then developed in that way. And he reminded his audience that although Christianity is dying or in its deathbed in most of Europe, the ethic has remained. But in Africa, he said, we have now adopted a Christianity that makes us feel good without being good. A Christianity that tells us that all our problems can be resolved by prayer and fasting. Yet the divine instruction is, go ye and get it by the sweat of thy brow. There is a sense in which these issues ought to occupy our mind. In the Muslim world, there is a word that is misused, the word jihad. When we hear the word jihad, we think that it is a war that is waged by the Muslim Ummah against non-Muslims. Yet in the early days, when you read the Quran and you read Muslim scholars such as Abu Huraira, jihad is a struggle within yourself, the struggle to do good. So our lives on a daily basis is about a jihad, the jihad to do good. And of course, in African reality and spirituality, and let us remind ourselves that Africa is diverse. But whether you are talking about a Yoruba, you are talking about an Igbo, or a Kamba, or a Gikoyo, or an Ovambo, or an Ofimbundu, all these things congregate around one thing, that we have a duty to do that which is good for the general good, because it is good to do good. The question then is, why is it that the evil of human trafficking, the thingification, I think there is one philosopher who talks about the thingification from the word thing, that we make human beings into things, into chattels that can then be traded in. And we are aware that this is not new. Throughout the ages, slavery has been alive and well. Even churches at one time sanctioned slavery. Colonization was also sanctioned, another form of slavery. Neo-colonization is yet another form of slavery. But even in those instances, there were always voices of reason who stood out and pointed out the fact that we need to liberate ourselves from these dark spaces in order to do that which is good. So even when there's been pitch darkness in the lives of human beings, there has always been the desire to do good. Not so long ago, 3 years to be exact, I was traveling from Tanzania, and I sat at the airport in Dar es Salaam, and next to me was a Catholic priest. We got into a conversation about human nature. And he told me something that I've never forgotten. He said it in Kiswahili. Mungu hawaiti wanaostahili, anawastahilisha anaowaita. That God does not call the deserving. He makes deserving those whom he calls. And I think there is power in that. Many of us, or many of you who are in this space, the work that you are doing is because you have been touched. And I always remember a story that you who are on a daily basis interacting with the Bible will always remember, the story of Paul. Paul makes a statement which has been subjected to various interpretations. It is to be found in his first letter to the Corinthians. Specifically, you are aware of it. Read it from the beginning, but one focuses on chapters 11 through to 21, and also 9 through 19 and 23. It is the good story of the Christians of Berea. The Christians of Berea, he tells us, were different from the Christians of Thessalonica because they questioned everything. And they questioned what had been told to them, and they confirmed it from themselves. And I remember it is in that very same story, when you go to the Acts of the Apostles at chapter 17, 22, you find the story there. And you find this big debate where Paul is in Athens at the Areopagus and is debating with Greek philosophers, and is telling them, I see you are very religious. And then there is an icon for a god with the unknown name. And he tells them, it is of this God that I want to talk to you about. And he goes on waxing lyrical and talks about that God and what he represents and how we are then supposed to behave. And Paul then, as recorded in Corinthians that I have made reference to, makes the statement that has, as I've already said, been subjected to various interpretation, that I was everything for everybody. For the Jews, I was a Jew. For those who follow the law, I was a follower of the law. For those who did not, and he goes on and on. And some have said that justifies us doing anything and everything, but that must be contextualized. Paul was simply, in my understanding, telling us that you've got to look at the circumstances in which you operate if you want to be effective. And I'm suggesting to those who we are sharing this forum with that in the environment of human trafficking, one has to be as careful can be in order, number one, to understand the problem. When the father was praying, he made reference to a number of things. What is it that makes a person want to leave their country? Recently, I listened to an interview of a young man from Guinea-Conakry, and he was recorded in Libya, and he was told by the interviewer, but don't you fear death, that you are going to die in the desert? And if you don't die in the desert, you are going to die in the Mediterranean Sea. And this was his answer. Even when I'm in Guinea, I'm dead already. In other words, this individual is prepared to risk all because he believes that when he is at home, he is a living dead. What are the circumstances that make people want to go to what is essentially modern day slavery? We now boast sometimes, and I hear the political class boasting about it, that we are 1.4 billion. It is estimated by the year 2050 that Africa will have a population of nearly 2 billion, that 1 out of every 5 human beings will be an African. And we say that this is a good thing. It will only be a good thing if, one, we have opportunities for our young men and women. Two, we have an environment or environments that create circumstances that are safe for women and indeed everybody else. Otherwise, what we call the youth dividend will be a youth curse. In the 20th century, in the early part of it, it was said that the 20th century would be Africa's century. When that did not happen, we said that the 21st century would be Africa's century. We are now going into the last part of the second decade of the 21st century. We are now talking about artificial intelligence. We are talking about the fourth industrial revolution. We are talking about the fifth industrial revolution. And today, even when we want to attend church or mosque, we don't need to go to the sanctuaries physically. You can reach the world from wherever you are. You can be in Chicago, in the United States of America, and preach to the entire world. We can evangelize to the whole world. We can have the Roman Catholic Pope sitting at the Vatican and talking to the entire Catholic congregants everywhere in the world. We can have that happening from Mecca, from every part of the world. That is the reality. This reality gives us an opportunity to disseminate knowledge in a manner that is unprecedented. And I want to imagine to myself that if some of the founding fathers of the church or even of Islam were to rise up, they would be shocked. They would be shocked that there were days when, in order to write a Bible, you had to use your hand. And there were days when the Bible had not been translated into languages, and that it is only with the coming of the printing press that today we are able to read the Bible as we do. They would be shocked. The Muslim Ummah would be surprised that indeed, when the Prophet died, there was not a single document called the Quran. The Quran is compiled and completed in compilation during the Caliphate of Uthman. And that takes effort, and that today that Quran can be read through any medium in the world, and the same with the Bhagavad Gita, and that if you are an African spiritualist, you can actually sit in Ouagadougou in Burkina Faso and talk to your congregation, and that the world is now becoming ecumenical. But that Christianity and that Islam, that Buddhism, that Hinduism, that African spirituality, of what value is it to us? Because Christ's very prescription to us is that we go and become the salt of the world and the light of the world. And that if salt has lost its saltiness, it shall be trodden underfoot. And these are the questions that we ought to ask ourselves as we gather here today. We must ask the bold question: why is it that in the face of all those instruments that we know as created by the United Nations, all those instruments that have been created by the African Union, the regional instruments against trafficking that have been created by ECOWAS, the local domesticated laws that we find in Nigeria, in Kenya, or in Ghana, trafficking is still a problem. Many are the times when I'm traveling and I transit through Bole Airport in Ethiopia, I see young girls bedecked in female regalia as Muslims. Occasionally, I talk to them and I ask them, are you Muslims? And some of them tell us or tell me I am not. But for the purpose of the job that I'm going to undertake in Saudi Arabia, I, Elizabeth, am now Fatuma. And they go there. When they go there, in certain households, they take their travel documents. Then they become sex slaves. Their testimonies, I have a testimony of one whom I rescued from Saudi Arabia. The father slept with her. The sons slept with her. She was dehumanized. She's back in Nairobi, Kenya, physically destroyed, spiritually laboring, and psychologically struggling. Yet, our politicians, still in their unguarded moments, tell us we have negotiated for jobs in those parts of the world. For them, it is winning the next vote. And we who are the citizens, we don't question them enough. They bombard us with statistics of the number of girls and boys that they have taken to Germany, to Bahrain, to Oman, to Saudi Arabia, but they don't ask whether they are in modern day slavery. And we now know they are. What are we doing about it? We have seen politicians collecting money to take them to be enslaved. Recently, in my office, young men came to me. They are from the Democratic Republic of Congo. They had been lured by an individual who told them that I could obtain visas for you to travel to Colombia. And once you travel to Colombia, you'd get to Suriname. And once you get to Suriname, you'd walk the border through Mexico and go to the United States, and your life will never be the same again. When they wanted to travel and went to the airport in Nairobi, they were told that the visas were fake. And in the intervening period, they had lost 15 million Kenya shillings to this individual, who I believe the next state is that he will be contesting a parliamentary seat. That is the state in which we find ourselves. We enact laws that we do not believe in. We create environments that we do not believe in. So I must agree with the father who said the opening prayer that until the day that we deal with the root causes, we can pray all we want, we can fast all we want, but desperation will be the driving force that forces women, young women, to go into the brothels and the harems of the Arab world. That unless we create opportunities by taking leverage of the resources that are given unto us, we'll always be the scum of the earth. The story or the parable of the 5 talents and 1 talent and 2 talents has been told too many times ad nauseum, but it is still correct that God in his divine wisdom gave to every civilization something. He gave us the most moderate climate on earth. He gave us minerals. He gave us intellect. But permit me to say, fellow Africans, I do not know if it is because of slavery or colonization, but I don't think that that argument is available to us. If you look through history, all civilizations have suffered enslavement and colonization. The time is now that we must stop giving excuses. If you are in Zambia, let us ask, what has the copper in Zambia done to the people of Zambia? If you are in Botswana, what has the diamond in Botswana done to the people of Botswana? If you are in Mozambique, the gas that is being generated, how is it changing the lives of the people of Mozambique? If you are in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the home of coltan, how are the lives of the people of the Democratic Republic of Congo being changed by the exploitation of that mineral? And the answer is none. They come and they take it. The words of Julius Caesar, Veni, Vidi, Vici, I came, saw, and conquered, ring true. People come to Africa and they say they came, they saw, and conquered. The time is now that we must address the economic situation. We cannot feed ourselves as I speak. In West Africa, they're importing rice from different parts of the world. We are importing meat. We are importing fish from China. We are importing sugar from Brazil. We are importing almost everything. The jobs are created elsewhere, and our young men and women are running to those places. So we must continue doing the good work. But the work we are doing in terms of fighting trafficking, even in the testimonies that we are giving, is equivalent to trying to irrigate the Sahara Desert using a teaspoon. The impact will be minimal. This requires a totally different approach, an approach that encompasses all. And my joy at this time is that many Africans across the continent of Africa are beginning to realize that the battle will not be won through this or that protocol, through this or that plan of action, but it is by us rolling up our sleeves and coordinating our activities so that those who are talking about borderless Africa must have a conversation with those who are saying that we must have one united Africa, and have a conversation with those who are saying that we must stop trafficking, and those who are saying that we must create opportunities for young men and women. The problem of Africa also is that we work in silos. We do not know what our people are doing in different parts of Africa. The day we combine our efforts, that is the day we are going to realize our potential. And if you allow me a little reference to the Bible, is it not the case that when Elijah was confronting the 450 prophets of Baal at Mount Carmel, and also in attendance the 400 disciples of Asherah, that he thought he was the only one who had not bowed to Baal, and God told him there are 6,000 others. The time is now for us to coordinate. So let not this forum, like other forums, be a one-off forum because we are celebrating the feast of Saint Bakita. Let it be that we are starting something that is going to go around the continent of Africa. Yesterday in Accra, when they lit the torch about borderless Africa, I told them, let this not be just another event. I told them, let this torch move from country to country so that it raises a conscience and raises a consciousness which will make us realize that we cannot be slaves forever. The time is now for us to do what we say. The time is now to exorcise the ghost of lamentation and the ghost of fear. The time is now to realize that action which is unwedded with our words and vice versa will not take us far. The time is now to realize that sophistry will not solve our problems. There is only action. René Descartes is still right. Cogito ergo sum. I think, so I am. If indeed we are thinking, then it is our duty to combine our efforts. So, ladies and gentlemen, my desire and prayers and at once is that we should use this forum to charge an army that will go out into the world and do that which is right and good. It can be done. Many times as I conclude, I always marvel at many things. And one of the things that I marvel at is the history of what we now call the Christian community. Starting modestly as it is with Christ, with only 12 disciples, one of them betraying him, the other one denying him, the other one, Philip, saying, we have seen you, we now want to see the Father. The other one doubting him. Then he is crucified. They are not there. They have ran away. They are cowards. And then somehow, on that journey to Emmaus and on the day of the Pentecost, these cowards turn into warriors. And 2,000 years later, Christianity, which was just but a sect of Judaism, now envelopes the world. We can do it. Even when we say that we are Christians. And even if we say we are Muslims, when the Prophet dies, Abu Bakr comes in, Omar comes in, Uthman comes in, Ali comes in, and the fitnas begin. But even in the face of those fitnas, Islam now has over 1 billion followers. And they also recognize Isa bin Maryam. Even in Hinduism, they say of the Lord Krishna that is just but another incarnation of that Isa bin Maryam. And we can talk about these in African spirituality. And the thesis that I'm building at the risk of being heretical, is this. It is a statement that was attributed to South Africa's Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe during the height of the apartheid movement. He was asked, do you believe in races? He said, there is only one race, the human race, created by one God. And if we realize that that is indeed the case, we have a duty to fight this. Our young men have died too often in the Mediterranean. They have died, they have been humiliated at embassies in their countries. Our women have been abused in the Arab world and in different parts of the world. We can stop it. We must stop it. And permit me to end with this famous poem by Khalil Gibran, that famous Lebanese American in his poem, Fear. Gibran says that when the river is flowing from the mountain, that river fears that it is going to lose itself. And as it comes down, crossing the forest, the fear grows even more intense. Then the river realizes that it cannot go back. It must flow down, and ultimately it joins the ocean. And then it realizes that when it joins the ocean, it does not actually disappear, but it becomes part of a larger thing. Each one of us are rivers. If we combine our efforts, we will create a tsunami. It is not a battle for the faint-hearted. It is a battle that will be won by those who are resilient, those who are prepared to sacrifice all. But let us also remember that it is an intergenerational battle. We will fight the fight, and we'll hand over the baton to the next generation. And ultimately, when history is written, it will be said, there are those who started, there are those who sustained, and we can say we have all fought the good fight. It can be done. It must be done, because the divine instruction was that you are your brother and sister's keeper. That is the wisdom of the carpenter of Nazareth when he gives the parable of the Good Samaritan. Let us be good Samaritans in this fight against trafficking. And courtesy of the social media, when we talk about evangelization, we are talking about spreading the message. Today, Sister Leonida is in the United States of America, over 13,000 kilometers. But courtesy of knowledge given to us by God, we have dwarfed distances. We have neutralized distance that we can speak in the manner that we are. So let us take advantage of this technology. The battle must be fought and won, and we are the warriors. God bless you.
Yes, that is Professor PLO Lumumba. What can I say, family, brothers and sisters? What you heard, it's true. Professor has expressed and spoken very well. Of course, one thing that I think we lack is unity. Africa is dying because of disunity. Africa is dying because of we young people. We believe and trust much on politicians. We need to move out of these politicians. And of course, you heard a lot, Professor, speaking about we have trusted it for too long, these politicians. I think we need to move out of trusting African politicians, because they're sellout, they're selling us, they're selling our resources, and they're becoming rich for doing nothing. I think African youth, the way we saw our founding fathers, Kwame Nkrumah, Kenneth Kaunda, Mwalimu Nyerere, Patsy Lumumba, Nelson Mandela, they came together and speak with one voice and demanded a freedom for African countries. I think this time we need also to do the same. And we, the current generation, we have an advantage. having internet connectivity, we have social media. So I think we need to mobilize, we need to come together, young people across the entire continent, in the diaspora, to share our thoughts how we can liberate this continent. I know many of us, we have been conquered in mind, don't believe in ourselves, but I'm sure we can do something better if we can decide to come together. As you heard from Professor, we don't need to fear to come together. The same we saw the liver, given the example of the liver, that when the liver move downstream, it faces challenges, and when it leads somewhere, the liver also have to enter into the ocean or into the lake, but it doesn't mean that the liver is the end of the liver. No, it is the starting of the new point of being the great thing, or to be part of the great things. So even we young people, Africans, we need to come together. To come together doesn't mean that you are going to become inferior. No, we are going to create something bigger. And that's what we need right now. With the current politicians that we have, don't expect changes. With these leaders that we have who are selling us, we don't expect things. You know, one day I've been saying, you know, I think we Africans, I think our leaders thought we Africans, our brain are not working, because, you know, just imagine, right now we are talking about industrialization, we're talking about human capital, but you find African leaders receiving money, exporting youth who are supposed to build industries, who are supposed to engage in economic production, who are supposed to build their nations outside of the countries, to abroad. And then they hire Chinese, they hire Europeans to do the things that are supposed to be done by the Africans. And we expect changes from this kind of mindset. I think nothing will happen if we don't come together, we young people, and demand accountability. I know, as I said, some of us, we have already conquered these politicians. They have money, they bribe people, they have their team, they have already divided us because of these political parties. So I think we need to break these chains. The way we have seen something happening in Burkina, in Mali, in Niger, we need to take the same steps in other parts of the continent. So family, let us not speak for too long. I'm waiting to hear a lot from you. Please, if you're new in this platform, make sure that you subscribe, because I need your subscription. And if you have already subscribed, please share this message to other Africans who are here in the continent and to those who are in the diaspora. Thank you.
Thank you, Africa, Mama Africa. Oh, yeah. You make African great. Thank you, freedom. Thank you, Africa.